Hi, I'm Sandra Knatzer. The module we'll be discussing now is Assessments and Evaluations for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children, Part 2, School Age. This is Module 4, the Full and Individual Evaluation. This module is Module 4 out of 7 modules. We'll begin today by discussing and reviewing the special education rules and regulations pertaining to evaluation. The first regulation that we will look at is our federal law, IDEA 2004. Then we have our Texas rules, our commissioner's rules, the Texas Administrative Code, and we have our state law in Texas, the Texas Education Code. More information about the rules and regulations can be found on the Region 18 Legal Framework website, and that website is listed there for you. The federal definition of deafness means a hearing impairment so severe that a child is impaired in the processing of linguistic information with or without amplification, and it adversely affects a child's educational performance. The second definition is hearing impairment, and it means an impairment, whether it's permanent or fluctuating, that adversely affects a child's educational performance. It's also not included in the definition of deafness. Additionally, under the federal law, we have special factors to consider the communication needs of the child. In that area, we must consider not only their language and communication needs, but we need to consider the opportunities for their direct communications with peers, professional personnel in the child's language and communication mode. We must consider their academic level, their full range of needs, and their opportunities for direct instruction in their primary communication mode. Additionally, assistive technology devices and services should always be considered. In Texas, we have the Texas Administrative Code, known as our Commissioner's Rules, and under the Texas Administrative Code, we have the definition of the eligibility auditory impairment. Auditory impairment is first, a student must meet the eligibility of the federal definition of deafness or hearing impairment, but additionally must include the otological examination by an otologist or a licensed medical doctor, and it must include an audiological exam by a licensed audiologist. Additionally, it must describe the implications of the hearing loss with and without amplification. The Texas Education Code 29.301 through 315 is our Deaf Bill of Rights. One section of the Deaf Bill of Rights, Section 29.310, indicates that procedures and materials for the assessment and placement of students who are deaf and hard of hearing must be conducted in their preferred mode of communication. We also have, under our Texas Education Code, a statewide plan. The statewide plan indicates we must recognize the need for development of language and communication abilities in students who are deaf and hard of hearing, and we must use communication that meets the needs of each individual student. We must ascertain their potential for communication through a variety of means: oral, fingerspelling, or sign language. Under the federal law, we have a definition for special education eligibility. The first part of that is that special education means specially designed instruction that is at no cost to parents and meets the unique needs of a child with a disability. The second part to that is the definition of a child with a disability. There are 13 disabilities under the federal law, and a child with a disability would meet the criteria for one of those eligibilities, such as hearing impairment or speech or language impairment. And the child would need specially designed instruction. Under our federal law, students must be evaluated before entering special education. This may occur when they are receiving services as a child, as an infant, 0 to 2 years of age, and prior to entering public school, or it may happen when a parent refers a student for special education, or later in school if a child has been identified with a hearing loss. A written report is required, and in Texas, this report is called a full individual and initial evaluation when a student is first referred for services. It must be completed no later than the 60th calendar day following the date in which the school has received a written consent from the parent or legal guardian requesting the evaluation. It should also be conducted using procedures that are appropriate for that student's method of communication. A reevaluation occurs not more than once a year unless the parent and the public agency agree otherwise, and it must occur at least once every 3 years unless the parent and the public agency agree that a reevaluation is not necessary. These evaluations are required if a student is in special education. During an evaluation, there are 4 types of data that should be considered: informal data, criterion reference data, curriculum-based data, and norm reference data. Informal data includes observations of students in the classroom, parent information, teacher reports. It could include grades, anecdotal records, work samples from the student. Criterion referenced information would include state assessment results. It could be early reading inventories. The Iowa Test of Basic Skills and the Stanford Achievement Test are both considered criterion referenced. Informal reading inventories also fall in that category. Curriculum-based assessments are actually created and developed based on the actual curriculum that is being taught in the classroom. This includes benchmark tests that are given periodically throughout the school year to determine if assessment is occurring in the general curriculum, and it could include rubrics, data sheets, or commercial products such as Ames Web. Norm-referenced assessment refers to any sort of standardized tests that are designed to compare and rank test takers in relation to one another. So norm-referenced tests are considered standardized assessment. And a standardized test is any form of a test that requires all the test takers to answer the same questions or a selection of questions from a common bank of questions. And they must answer them in the same way. And it's scored in a consistent or standardized manner, so it makes it possible to compare the performance of individual students or groups of students. There are some issues with standardized testing for our students who are deaf or hard of hearing. Standardized assessment presumes that there is a certain level of English proficiency that's not necessarily present among students who are deaf. So some of the problems include the difficulties with English, having diverse modalities of communications, possibly having deficient reading skills. There may be culturally related differences or experiences among students who are deaf or hard of hearing. And there could also be some considerations for the validity and reliability of the test results when students who are deaf or hard of hearing are administered standardized assessments. So, departure from standard procedures will depend on the test itself and the instructions for the test and the task involved. We're told from research that minor procedural modifications don't usually invalidate the test results unless they change the nature of the test, but major procedural modifications could likely invalidate the test results. So evaluators, when conducting evaluations with students who are deaf or hard of hearing, need to use their professional judgment, and they need to refer to the instructions from their manuals for test administration, and determine if major procedural modifications have occurred in a standardized assessment. This information will be reported in the full and individual evaluation.